that separation of church and state was meant primarily to be for the protection of the church, because otherwise corruption reigns supreme in the church if the church is seen as a vehicle to get state power. You have to separate that too.
I just want to bring that up because I see the tendency of what goes on in our politics today, and we're not too many steps away from what happened with the Crusades or what happens with maybe the communists. We're just a few steps away, and all it takes is the right person with the right way of talking.
And I should say, people. It's not just us who are only a few steps away. They say Christianity, it's the more progressive aspect of our society, let's say the left, which is, I would say in Canada, has probably gained a lot more power in the government and with the state than, let's say, authentic Christianity has. And the left has no qualms whatsoever of entwining itself with the state to enforce things, get things done, bring laws into effect that essentially flat out contradict authentic Christianity and so forth. So this isn't just a tendency. It's a human nature tendency. That's the bottom line.
That's my point. It's human nature to try and get power and try and enforce what we believe and make other people believe the same thing.
Well, since we're kind of comparing with our current day, what do you think about Stark's point that this is a response to aggression by Muslims and a request by Christians in the East, nations in the East that were primarily Christian, for help? Does that sound anything like today? Ukraine?
Well, obviously,
Russia?
Obviously it would.
Is there any analogy there?
Except for one very important point. And if we're talking about the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, one very important point is Ukraine is not asking for the help of the Christians here. Ukraine is asking for the help of the states. I mean, the literally different governments to help them out. And now as far as what the Christian response should be, I'm a lot more careful. Like, I've seen those videos on YouTube where somebody's dropping grenades on Russian shoulders in a trench. And, I think the Christian response is there are human beings down there who have value in the sight of God. They have eternity stretching before them, and it just puts everything into different perspective. So I think Christians need to be real careful about endorsing, let's say, the actions of the state. Even if it does appear to be justified, sometimes the state will go too far or use tactics that end up making the other people who supported them look bad. So I think we really need to distinguish here. But it is true that we have a situation right now unfolding in Europe where various countries are being asked for support. But I do think it's important to say they're not asking Christianity for support.
Yeah, those distinctions are important. The key one that is relevant is just the request for help from other people because we're being invaded. And if we think that's okay to help Ukraine, maybe Stark's point that it's okay to help the Eastern Christians is okay too. And I tend to think that is true. The problem came, though, the way the church did it. They just mixed God in with the violence, and they mixed the church and state, like we're talking about. And it's the religious people and the theologians that recruited the soldiers with very religious messages, and they expropriated the teaching of the church in terms of forgiveness and giving pardon and a person gaining eternal life. They offered all those things to the people who were willing to fight, and that was the worst thing that I think happened, because that just violated the proper separation of the church from the state that should have been taking place there, and it just brought Christianity down to the lowest level. And so all these people, who many of them probably had noble intentions to want to free their Eastern neighbors and helped them out. And then they were offered this pardon for all their sins and eternal life forever. It just got twisted, out of line. The John Dickson, who wrote Bullies and Saints, he's the counterpart to Stark. He's the other historian who says, no, not so fast, Stark. There is an apology required here on the basis of this. And I think Dickson is right. I mean, I wasn't planning on going into, and I'm not going to go into all the horrible, brutal things that happened. I mean, there were awful, horrible things, but it's well known in history, and I'm just willing to admit all that and say that the reason that we can actually criticize the Crusades again is Christian teaching. This is a crooked behavior, as Dickson calls it. This is crooked, and it's contrary to the straight line of the teachings of Jesus. To ask a person to put the cross, the sign of Christianity, which is to teach that this sign of death, of the sign of the powerful being able to control the slave and the weak and the oppressed, this sign which became a sign of the oppressed can become the victor through Christ. To take that sign and use that for the brutality that was done in the name of Christ is horrible, and we need to admit it.